don't we really associate with any Jews or celebrate any Jewish holidays, or why don't the Jews celebrate Christian holidays? And it kind of created a little paradox in my head where the Christians say that the Jews are the chosen ones, but they don't believe Jesus is the Messiah. They believe he's an idol. And so I got a little confused, and nobody really seemed to. And on top of that, Jesus practiced Judaism. So I'm just wondering, if you could maybe help me understand a little bit.
Okay, let's untangle this the best we can in the time that we have. First of all, when people say Jews are the chosen, and when Christians say it, or when Scripture says it, it has a particular meaning. And that means that they were chosen to enter into the first covenant with God. That's the first thing. That's why they're referred to as chosen. Does that mean that they will always make right decisions? Does that mean there's any sort of specialness that way? No. It's the specialness is that they were chosen to be the first in that covenant with God and to receive the law, the Ten Commandments from Moses. That's what it's referring to specifically. So if I was a Jew and I practiced Judaism, why aren't Christians Jewish now? First of all, before the death, and crucifixion, the death, and the resurrection, there is no Christianity. So even my followers were adhering to the Jewish belief system. There was no reason to do anything but that, because ultimately that's what there was. The fulfillment didn't happen until after the death and the resurrection. So of course, everything that was practiced was still Judaism. However, you find that the Jewish belief system was built upon the original covenant coming down to the children of Israel, given to Moses and imparted. In that covenant, God writes on those tablets of stone the Ten Commandments. So those commandments are the law. That law is followed by our Jewish brothers and sisters. Then you get into Christianity in what Christians refer to as the New Testament, technically the New Covenant, and you start getting in and seeing where that changes. So people asked about the law. In Matthew 5:17, my response was, "Do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets," which were the Torah. "I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them." So, after that point comes the change being that now the law is fulfilled because mankind cannot live by the law. Never could. And so in order to bridge that gap, I came, died on the cross, and resurrected to fulfill it, not to get rid of it. That law was by God, but to fulfill that law the way mankind could not. And this covenant now became new. Didn't mean it disappeared. It means there was a new covenant. Hebrews 8:13. In speaking of a new covenant, he makes the first one obsolete, and what is becoming obsolete and growing old is ready to vanish away. Now, it's talking about that now that it's fulfilled, you don't lean on the law in the same way, in the same sense. It's not needed. He's paid for it, and therefore those, or what you refer to as Christians, actually goes through a process of language. So you say Christian, but the word Christian means follower of the Messiah. So then the Jews of the day that followed me believed I was Yeshua HaMashiach, Jesus the Messiah, Joshua the Messiah. And in that process, this branch, now to the Jews it would look like a non-Jewish cult, which sounds pretty harsh, but that's the reality and the fair way to put it to our Jewish brothers and sisters. But in the Christian belief, that it was a branch of Judaism that fulfilled the prophecies of the Messiah coming. There were those, and this is part of the reason why Judas Iscariot betrayed me, was because Judas believed that the Messiah would come, but as a political figure, to abolish Rome in that particular case, and reinstill the theocracy of Judaism. So he was militant in that belief. So technically at this point, practicing Orthodox Jews are still awaiting the arrival of the Messiah. The Messiah followers, aka Christians, are looking back towards the Messiah already coming, and therefore fulfilling the law, and everything that they get through is through the grace and the blood on the cross, not on fulfilling the law. So that's why they're different, but come from the same line. You can't separate either of those things. They have to tie into one another. But that's why Christians don't practice Judaism. And a lot of the festivals, or a lot of the feasts, were tied into the absence of the Messiah. So Passover, you're putting the blood on the doorpost, so the spirit of death passes over. Well, the spirit of death is abolished, fulfilled by the blood on the cross. The final sacrifice. So Passover is not needed to the Christian. So when you start understanding that, you start seeing as to why they're no longer celebrated. And it doesn't mean that there isn't beauty in them. And there are some that I wish Christians did understand more and did celebrate and understand the importance and the weight of them, because they play such a large part in the Christian story. But again, Christian is, because of the word and the way it's gone through from the Hebrew to the Greek to Latin, and then gets modified to the term Christian or follower of Christ, but Christ means the Messiah, so it's really follower of the Messiah, and that it sounds like it's separate from, but when you get past the language, all it means is that there was a people, first Jews and then Gentiles, that believed that Jesus was the Messiah promised in Judaism. And there were those Jews that believed that ended up following me. And then there were Gentiles that ended, first to the Jews, second to the Gentiles, and there were Gentiles who ended, non-Jews who ended up following. And then they had to back believe the stories throughout Judaism and then believe in the stories of Christianity to see that path as well. But it doesn't make a Christian a Jew, because Jews are still waiting for the Messiah. Christians or followers of the Messiah believe the Messiah has already come. You are listening to The Jesus Christ Show. To ask your question, dial 800-520-1534.
Thinking of buying a house and Want a really low interest rate? Owning has a special for home purchases, where Owning pays all your closing costs, and the rate in APR is an unheard of 1.875% for a 15-year fixed mortgage with 20% down. This is the craziest low rate for a mortgage with no closing costs that Owning has ever done. 1.875% rate in APR. Heck, we're almost paying you to live in a new house. Call 833-2-OWNING or go to owning.com to see if you qualify for this crazy low 1.875% rate. That's a fixed rate loan at 1.875% with no closing costs. Call 833-2-OWNING now because 1.875 could go away at any time.
NMLS 2611, licensed by the Department of Financial Protection and Innovation under the California Residential Mortgage Lending Act. Subject to credit approval. Offer assumes the use of lender's choice escrow and title services. Call 823-858-0066 for terms and conditions.
That's 833-2-OWNING or owning.com. 833-2-OWNING or owning.com.
Do you hear My Computer Career ads and think, I don't know anything about computers? Well, you don't have to. Before starting, many graduates can turn a computer on and off. And that's it. Now they're IT pros. You could do it too. Go to mycomputercareer.edu and take the free career evaluation. You could start your new life in as little as 4 months. Grants covering up to 53% of the cost are available to those who qualify. It's not rocket science. It's My Computer Career.
From the Stone Age to the digital age, people have been having weird, wonderful, and downright absurd relationships. Fall in love with Ridiculous Romance, the podcast where real-life spouses Diana and Eli talk about the wildest and most interesting romantic partners in history.
So Lorena Bobbitt throws it out her window where police find it, and they pack it in a hot dog box full of ice.
It's called a big bite box.
Oh, listen to Ridiculous Romance on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey parents, have you ever wondered how to talk to your kids about the crazy things happening in the world? As great as schools can be, they often don't teach important things like hard work, how to start a business, the golden rule, or how the economy works. But kids need to learn about big ideas like these, which means it's up to you. So, how do you go about it? By telling your kids stories. And that's the power behind the beautifully illustrated Tuttle Twins books. The Tuttle Twins is a series of children's books that have sold over 2 million copies already. These books teach important ideas that teachers and textbooks don't really discuss. And they make it super easy for you to help your kids learn the values that our country was founded upon. If you want to help your kids understand how the world works so they can be a positive part of it,